Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have George Makris, Chairman and CEO of Nasdaq-listed Simmons Bank. We also have Elizabeth Machen, Executive Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Simmons Bank, to discuss the first of its kind corporate sponsorship across multiple universities and encompassing every team within each university women's athletic program. It's great to have you both with us. George, I'm going to start with you. Can you share the inception for the idea behind the MultiUniversity initiative to support women's athletics?
Sure, Jill. Well, we were approached about a single university's women's athletics program with a typical advertising package. And when we sat down and talked about that internally and thought about the possibilities of activation with women's athletics, we decided that that was a pretty good concept and that we'd like to expand it. You know, we cover 6 states and multiple universities across that span. It was really hard for us to focus on just one with the possibilities that we saw across our entire footprint. So that's how it really started. We didn't know if the other universities would be interested, but as it's turned out, a lot of interest in this sponsorship opportunity, particularly the way we plan to activate.
And why did you decide to target student athletes, and in particular women athletes?
Well, the obvious point there is diversity. When you take a look at the banking industry, we have a long way to go, quite honestly, with regard to diversity in our executive group, particularly. When I go to conferences, everybody looks like me there. And so it's impossible for us to go out and hire to correct that diversity issue. So we're going to have to build that internally. And when we take a look at the characteristics of successful athletes, what we have to remember is these women are competing at the highest level available to them. That didn't start last week. They began that journey a long time ago. And when you consider their dedication, their ability to multitask, their success, their expectations, and quite honestly, their ability to deal with adversity, which is not a common trait that's done real well. If you think about this, softball player that hits 300 is probably an All-American, at least All-Conference. That means they're successful 30% of the time. In our business, if we have a 30% market share, that's really, really good. But that means that there's 70% available to us out there. And how do we deal with that competition? You know, the other thing that we really need to think about is that in the women's NCAA basketball tournament, 68 of the top teams in the country enter that tournament. Only one of them leaves with a winning streak. That means 67 of those top level teams finish their season with a loss. Now, how do you handle that? Well, they handle it really, really well. In our business, in real life, we know that there's going to be a lot of adversity. We're going to have to overcome no quite a bit. And this group has the experience and the expertise to handle it. That's a quality that's very important.
And how do you see this program setting itself apart from your typical sports sponsorship?
Well, first of all, it's a very comprehensive sponsorship of all women's athletics. So we hope to raise awareness of women's sports, of the quality of women's sports. I tell you, it's a very humbling experience to be outdriven by a lady that's 5'6" and 110 pounds. But these athletes are world class, and to bring more exposure to them is very, very important. But I think the thing that really appeals to us is that there is an entire alumni base at these universities that have never had a chance to participate with a sponsor like Simmons Bank. So it's not only the current athletes, but it's the alumni of these programs that we're as interested in as the current athletes.
And the list of schools includes universities from the Power Five as well as some smaller schools. Why choose these particular schools?
Well, they're all in our footprint. Obviously, Arkansas is our home base. The University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff is in our hometown of Pine Bluff. So we recruit in all of these areas. We bought the old Stillwater National Bank in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Therefore, Oklahoma State's a very important university in our footprint. We bought Southwest Bank out of Fort Worth. So TCU and SMU, very important. We bought Landmark Bank out of Columbia, Missouri. So the University of Missouri is very important to us. And then we bought 4 banks in the Memphis, Nashville area in Tennessee, therefore Memphis and Vanderbilt. So all of these have deep roots in our Simmons system. And it's a way for us to give back to the communities, but also support our efforts to recruit fine future associates, if you will.
Yeah, that does open up some fantastic networking opportunities. Elizabeth, let's bring you into the conversation. This sponsorship is a unique vision designed to serve as an incubator for developing women as future leaders in the business world. Can you tell us a little bit more about the activations you're designing for the program?
Sure. I'd say one of the bigger programs we're looking into is an exclusive internship program for these women athletes. So we want to introduce them to all that banking has to offer. And not probably necessarily what you think right off the bat when someone unfamiliar with the industry thinks of banking. I mean, in today's banking environment, you can be in marketing, HR, you could do coding and development in our IT group or work with cybersecurity. So there are vast opportunities within our company for all sorts of interest. And so we just want to be able to introduce that to these women athletes and bring them in and get them acquainted to what all banking has to offer, specifically at Simmons.
And I understand that you've already implemented some of the elements within the universities. Can you share some things you've done to implement the program?
Sure. So to start, most of it is the activation of those pretty turnkey assets like signage and chairbacks and things along those lines at each university. We're also working on the formal announcement, including some video footage from all the universities, and hopefully at some point in time we'll introduce those student athletes into our marketing plan as well. Obviously we have NIL at play, and so that adds a layer of complexity to the mix, but we have plenty underway and more to come.
What are some of the different marketing elements you're looking to use to build brand awareness around the sponsorship, and how are you leveraging digital and social media to aid that awareness?
Sure. I think it was referenced earlier. One of the things we want to do is really drive awareness of these women's sports and encourage people to participate, encourage and attend those events. So we have a lot of plans around our webpage and social to do ticket giveaways, and as well as awareness of featuring certain athletes and their performance. So we want to drive folks to support those women athletes and see them play and kind of celebrate their successes. We have some really high performing teams across our footprint that are performing really well. So we want to draw audiences in and get them to go out and support their women teams just like they do their football teams at their universities.
With the passage of new rules in the NCAA this year allowing athletes to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness, does this change the landscape for how you implement the program?
It definitely does. NIL is a tricky proposition. It definitely has more questions than answers today. You have universities that each have their own policies. There's individual state laws that change how you can approach NIL, and there's talk that federal law will come in and overlay that. So there's still quite a bit to figure out. It very much proves that college sports is a business and will only get more down that path in the future. I think college sports sponsorships is well north of $3 billion today, and that's pre-NIL. So you're going to see a massive amount of money spent in that space. For Simmons particularly, one of our key culture cornerstones is better together and teamwork. So one of the things we don't want to do with NIL is we don't want to go single out a single athlete and sign them for an NIL deal and maybe create some frustration with other team members that they weren't included in that program. So our NIL approach will be one of more of a team-based approach, and for anyone that wants to participate with us.
And George, back to you. Let's talk about the acquisitions a little bit more. You recently announced the acquisition of Nasdaq member Spirit of Texas Bank shares, which will expand your reach into new markets like Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. Will you be looking to expand this program into these and other markets?
Well, Jill, we certainly will, because that's going to be another focus area for associate development. Spirit of Texas has done a great job. Their headquarters is in Conroe, Texas. So we're talking about Houston, San Antonio, Austin, College Station. All of those communities have great universities that we would love to partner with. We're still early in this process with Spirit of Texas, so we don't have anything to share today, but it is certainly of interest to us. And quite honestly, if we have any other acquisitions that put us in other college towns, we'll have that same interest there.
Nasdaq recently approved new listing rules regarding board diversity. Do you see this program aiding in the development and recognition of women who could serve in a board capacity?
Well, I think certainly long-term that's the case. And if we're able to activate the alumni, there are certainly many qualified women for board service within that group. So yes, our board, fortunately, is a very diverse board today. We made that effort very distinct several years ago, and we've been very successful. We will continue along that path, but it will certainly introduce us to a lot of new candidates for consideration, not just for us. I'll tell you one other thing, and I've had several conversations with other companies who are in the same boat that we're in. They're very anxious to see how this works. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit that we didn't have a broader corporate sponsorship group associated with this, because they have the same interest that we do with regard to diversity.
And finally, George, to wrap up here, Simmons has recently been in the news regarding new sports sponsorships. Can you expand on why you've chosen sports as part of your marketing strategy?
Well, I would say that our ultimate objective at Simmons Bank is to create brand loyalty. And I know you're a Rutgers fan, and I can't imagine what it would take for you to switch to Notre Dame, but probably a significant event. Well, when we attach our brand to other brands, it helps create that brand loyalty. We're supporting something that's very important to someone else. So I would say that the brand affiliation with college athletics is second to none.
I would certainly agree with you there. George and Elizabeth, thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.